Welcome to Intuition and Orgasms, a daring new podcast with Jen Hamilton and Greg Riley, where we dive deep into the intertwined worlds of spirituality, relationships, and self-discovery. We're here to shed light on the often untouched topics that everybody needs to wake up to. Expect raw, unfiltered conversations as we tackle subjects like emotional intelligence, trauma healing, conscious relationships, and yes, better orgasms. We combine our unique experiences and skills, Greg with his intuitive insights and therapeutic expertise, and Jen with her background in clinical hypnotherapy, coaching, tantra, and esoteric psychology. Together, we aim to help you upskill your life, understand your true self, and build meaningful connections. Each episode will explore the tools and practices that foster personal growth and transformation. From unpacking childhood imprints and societal conditioning to discussing the impact of spirituality and energy on relationships, we leave no stone unturned. Plus, we'll share our personal stories of overcoming adversity, leaning into our shadows, and finding profound joy and connection on the other side. Join us on this journey to know yourself, communicate better, and ultimately, fuck better.
Good everybody, welcome to another episode of Intuition and Orgasms. Co-host here, Greg Riley. Jen Hamilton, how are you?
I'm amazing. How are you?
Oh, great. After our with technical details of having to upgrade the application on Riverside. So, note to self, don't ignore the messages that you need to upgrade.
I mean, we could that's an analogy for life, isn't it? Like, don't ignore the signs that you're going through an upgrade.
I'll be fine. Yeah, I can use this old version that doesn't do what I want to do. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
We got a really interesting. We might just have one topic for today, mightn't we?
Yeah. Well, and like little places that we can go to through that as well.
Because it is a very, very common thing, and people kind of ask, because people have their lists when they get into a relationship. I want this and this and this, right? But we're going to have something different because you mentioned something a while ago on the podcast, which sort of I noted that down, and you said we've got to go there, so let's go there. And this is on both sides, male and female, bare minimum standards.
Yeah,
go for it.
Oh. Okay, I want to speak into my current relationship because you guys, if you've been following the podcast for a while, you know I'm in a relationship with Cass, and
we are living through you. You know that every one of us who is married, we are living through this. We're watching this.
I've just come out of 5 days of intensive tantra training, and every day I was walking in with new hickeys on my neck. I covered them up with makeup this morning, but everyone was like, "Tell us the details." It's so funny because he's a tantra practitioner as well. So I was coming home and just full of all of this sexual energy, and it was amazing. So I mean, and we have an amazing relationship. We started off in a very conscious space anyway because we're two very awakened people. We work with plant medicine. We're in the tantric space. We're in the coaching space. All that kind of stuff. And I've noticed over the years where I have dropped my standards for the sake of a fuck or getting loved, feeling wanted, feeling valued, feeling validated, whatever that was. And oh man, I've got some stories. And I'd love to share some of those stories today because there's some fucking doozies. I remember, okay, let's dive into story time. I'm not going to mention any names, obviously, but this was back in 2018. So I'd gone through a separation in 2017. And I was finding my feet the following year. So I was like, so what happens is when you go through a traumatic event like a separation, generally what happens is your mind wants to regress to a time before the event where you were happy, where you found, where you were joyful in life. Yeah. And what happened is I went back to my partying days and I was like, oh, I remember how much fun I used to have partying and going to clubs. And so because I was then a part-time parent instantly, I was co-parenting, I was like, I have weekends free. And because I was so stressed through the breakup, I was drinking, I was smoking, I was stressing, I was starving myself. I looked hot as shit, right? So I was going out all the time and I was getting so much attention. I loved it because I wasn't getting any of that in my relationship previously. So I'm like, oh my God, this whole new version of me. And I remember I was at a bar with a girlfriend one night. We got chatting to these group of guys, and they were like young. They were a little bit younger. I was like early 30s at the time, and I think the guy that I was talking to was 28. He was tall. He was so handsome. And we were kind of flirting backwards and forwards. And I didn't know the flirting game. I didn't know. I couldn't remember how to do one night stand. I was lost. I'd been in a relationship for so long. So anyway, he's kind of giving me the hint that he wants to leave. And then I saw him talking to another girl. And I was like, game on, mole. I'm like, he's mine, right? So in my mind, I'm like, oh, I've got this over this little blonde pocket rocket, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, he comes up to me and he's like, I'm getting ready to leave soon. And I said, who are you leaving with? And he was like, and I was like, who are you leaving with? Like, to really hint that it was me. Anyway, I left with him. And so to me, in my head, I'd won, right?
Yeah.
I was leaving. So I lived around the corner from his friend's place where he was staying. So I was like, I'm going to go get a taxi home after everything had finished. And I walked out of the room that I was in with him. And in the lounge room was this girl and her friends. They had come back with his group of friends. And she was like practically like, I don't know, waiting for him. Did he organize it with her? I have no fucking clue, Greg. I have no clue. I didn't even get a taxi home that night. I grabbed my shoes and I had to do the walk of shame.
Walk of shame.
He didn't even walk me to the door. Usually I'd call it the stride of pride, not the walk of shame, but this was a walk of shame. I walked out. I walked home that night. It was like 3:00 in the morning. I'm looking up at the moon. It was a full moon. And I looked at the moon. I'm like, you need to have my back. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Like, what am I doing? So I walked out of there. I still kept in contact with this guy. I was obsessed with how he didn't treat me well enough and I had to prove myself. And I went back.
Hang on. Why? This is great for men, right?
Yeah, this is where I've come from. This is what I want people to understand.
Why?
That I didn't just wake up as a conscious being. I had to go through these absolute fucking shit shows. To be honest,
what's attractive about it? What's attractive about this being treated like shit thing?
I had a really big penis, Greg.
Apart from that one.
He knew it and he was in his ego and he breadcrumbed me. And I was hungry for the bread. I wanted the whole loaf.
What was it about him that made him so attractive? Apart from what was it that you really went, I want that guy. No matter how bad he's treating me, he's made me do the walk of shame. He's treating me like against every single one of my values. What's inside your head going, I want to go there?
That if he dates me, I win. That if I can prove to him that I'm worthy of being more than a one night stand, then I'm valuable.
Is it competition with other women too? Is it the competition that he's picked me over everybody else?
Absolutely. I was a pick-me girl. I was like, what do I have to do to get pegged? This was one of the exact scenarios that got me into going hypnotherapy because I want to help women like me who have no self-esteem and who are just giving themselves away to fuck boys. And I called him out on things. Like we'd had a conversation later on down the track and he's like, I wasn't leading you on. I made it very clear to you that I wasn't in a space of wanting to date anyone. And I'm over here going, why wouldn't you want to date me? What am I not doing to be worthy enough for you to date me? Like that was the mentality. Everything was external. All my validation was external. Everything that I wanted to be, I had to be for someone else. That was the mentality. And it wasn't until I actually ended up in a very conscious dynamic with someone where we were casual, we were seeing each other. It was open. Like we weren't technically dating, it was open. But it was the most conscious experience I've ever had.
Can I ask something there? And
Sure.
This might be a complete tangent like we tend to do. Casual relationships, the impact of casual relationships, can they work? Are they healthy? Does someone actually get hurt in that space? Because I mean, you do have this sort of, today's tend to be there's a lot more casual relationships, and we talked about before the other week about pair bonding and number of partners and that, how that sort of, the more partners you have, the less ability to actually have a healthy relationship or marriage down the track. talk about casual relationships.
I've had one proper casual relationship, and it was only because he was someone that I'd met at a festival like a few years beforehand. I was actually out at a charity event one night, and I'd posted
Yeah.
a photo on Facebook. I was in this really hot red dress, and he texted me. He's like, "Are you heading out afterwards?" I was like, "Oh, this is really random to get a message from him." I'm like, "Yeah." I ended up meeting him at a strip club with his mate, and I went home with him.
Yeah.
Right? This is what you do after charity events, apparently.
It's-
I tell you, I got
I wonder what
stories.
happened
I got
after
all the
those
good
events. I
stories.
really did wonder why charity events, they end up at strip clubs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can even imagine what goes on after that as well in the bathroom. Anyway, so I went home with this guy, and there was like no emotional attraction there at all. And we decided that we would keep seeing each other in that way. There was no desire for connection there. I would basically, so at the time I was in a manager position, I was managing people. And when I had a
Yeah.
hard day of like hiring or firing people, I was very much in my masculine in that job. And I would literally message him and be like, "I'm coming over this afternoon. I need you to choke me and dominate me because I need the tables to turn." So I was using it to my benefit, basically to release energy, as was
Yep.
he. It was very much like, get in, have sex, leave. We don't really kiss. We don't ask about each other's day. It was a very unconscious dynamic in that way. And it
Yep.
worked until it didn't. It was only, I don't know, probably a few months worth or something.
Can they be
Um,
damaging in that space? Can they actually be
Absolutely.
damaging when you
Yeah.
have that kind of very, it's not, there's no kissing, it really is no intimacy there. It's purely
Yeah.
a sexual.
From what I know now, through like really like connecting with my yoni, doing tantra, being in a very conscious space, I understand now what I was giving away at the time, what I was allowing into my body, what I was, the dynamics that I was playing in was actually not serving my soul or my consciousness at all. And again, I was very sleepy then. I was doing recreational drugs at times. Like I was so, my words were literally, "I am dead inside." And
Yeah.
when I was talking to my boss at the time, who I also did my NLP coaching with, she was like, "You can't use those words. Your body is listening." And I'm like, "Fine, I'm emotionally calcified." And I wore it as a badge of honor because I couldn't cry, and I was so heavily in my masculine, and you can see it in the clothes that I wore. I wore black all the time. I wore really dark, heavy makeup all the time. Like I was such a different person to who I am now. And I love that I've been through that process to come out the other side of that and obviously have good stories and be able to support people that have gone through it. But it does nothing for your vitality. It does nothing for your energy. It does nothing for your consciousness and your soul's expansion at that time. It can be really damaging. It can be really damaging as a woman, knowing that you are a piece of meat to someone, that they're using you for something, you're using them for something. And like the way in which I see sex as so sacred now, like divine unity between two people, not playing in the space of poly or open or this and that, has, been there to explore had I wanted it to earlier on, to know now what I have and how beautiful that is. I look back and I wish I could tell my younger self, okay, there's a very different experience coming to you. Hang in there, girlfriend.
Well, there's also the con going on, right? Because it's like you said there's a story you tell yourself because, I'm okay with the casual relationship when you're really not, right?
No,
You really aren't okay with it, but you're
no.
telling yourself that I'm okay with it.
Uh-huh.
And, so there's a lot of stuff, that really we try and convince ourselves that we're okay with it because
Yeah.
at least we're getting some love and affection and someone's wanting to be with us, but they're not really wanting to be with us. You're just a
And
number on the bedhead. So
the rejection that comes from giving that part of yourself away hurts more than like if you walked up to someone at a bar and they said, "No, I'm not interested in talking to you." When I first met the father of my children, we met through friends of friends at a festival.
yeah,
We formed a group and we were going out on weekends. He was a DJ, so like we knew everyone. We were out partying a lot. And we were casual for a year. And at the end of the year, I said to him, "I've got this job at the Gold Coast. I'm looking at moving. What are we actually doing? Like, we're spending time together. We're friends. you come over and we're not having sex, but we're spending the night and sleeping together. This is more to me. What's happening? And from there,
Mm.
he was like, let's end it. I don't want anything more than this. I can't do a relationship. And I was so hurt. And we had actually organized our group of, so we had a group of 7 posse. And we'd organized our Christmas going out catch up thing. And the tension between him and I was so awkward. And everyone in the group knew what was
Yep.
going on. And he actually came up to me that night. We were high off our heads. And he came up to me and he said, I actually do want to have a relationship with you. And I checked in with him the next day. I said, we were high on MD last night. I'm like, everyone loves each other on MD. I'm like, are you serious? Like, do you actually want a relationship? And he was like, yes. And from there, he basically never left. And we had the most incredible relationship, 2 beautiful children through that. But the rejection, I remember I was out Christmas shopping with my brother at like Westfield or something. And I remember getting his text message and reading it. And I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, this whole time we've had like this amazing casual relationship. I've now said, hey, I'm opening myself up through vulnerability to sharing my emotions with you, that I have feelings for you and I want something more. And you're telling me that you don't want me after everything we've been through. Like rejection hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's because I see a lot of females, and they'll say that, and I'll sit there. You can actually see it in their eyes. You can see it in the way they're sitting, the body language, and behind the words. Like, yeah, I'm okay. The casual relationship was like, fuck off. You're not okay with that.
No.
Like, you sleep with other women, and you're okay with that. Like, what part of your value system does that actually misalign with? What are you actually telling yourself about yourself by allowing that behavior? And then you take that rejection into the next relationship, or you choose a partner that's completely unsuitable because you have been rejected, because you go and pick a guy who will never cheat on you, but you're completely unattracted to him.
Yes. And we're going to always do the things that are going to support our beliefs to make us right. Because as long as we're right, we're okay. So if I have this core belief that I'm unlovable, that I'm not worthy of being in a relationship with someone that I have feelings for, I'm going to find ways in which to sustain that proof, to sustain that belief, to go, well, see, I told you so. See, I'm with this person and they don't want me and I have to prove my worthiness to them.
Yeah.
And it honestly, like, it is, when you realize it, there's almost like you've got to go through this epic level of self-forgiveness, Greg. Like, there has to be so much forgiveness, because like I could, if I wanted to sit in like beating myself up for who I was, all of those years ago, I could sit there and I could really just sit in discomfort and pain with it. But then again, I was doing all I could do with what I had and what I knew at the time.
Yeah. And it's like, I see a lot of girls actually, they date the beta guy because they'll do anything for him too.
Yeah.
They'll give him everything they want, apart from sexual attraction and the protection that they need, right? But it's that I'll settle but I'm really dreaming about the other guy who I can't have. And you know as well as I do, and people are going to get offended by this, women cheat more than men these days.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And people kind of think it's men out there, men watch porn and stuff like that, but it's actually statistically now, women now cheat more than men. It's flipped the other way. And even the definition of cheating, like what I've got a definition of cheating, right? It's very rigid, right? So, and again, look, you and I deal in this space where there's not negotiables, right? So if I'm dealing with a couple who are coming for a relationship and he's watching porn, it's a not negotiable. It stops immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
You cannot watch porn and reject your wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't sit there and not sleep with your wife, but jacking off to some chick in Russia. That for me, that's cheating. Right? People go, great, but that's no. Emotionally, physically, you may not be there, inserting thing into a hole, but that for me, that's just destroys relationships, right?
Yeah.
And people have this kind of thing, but women are much more, grey about it, much more manipulative about cheating, is right. Men are just very blatant. It's either doing it or not, right?
Yeah.
Women are much more seductive.
Absolutely, because there's this element of like the validation that you get through like some man responding to you being seductive towards them. Like if you don't hold your own value, if you're looking for validation outside of you and someone's going to give you that, you're going to give them more of that because you want more of that. It's that breadcrumbing mentality. It's that give an inch, take a mile, and to be desired as a woman, for a man to witness us as a goddess, as a queen, as desirable, whether they see our energy or just generally it's a physical attraction, to receive that, it feels good. And if you don't know how to cultivate that within yourself and you're looking for that externally in the way that you dress, in the way that you speak, in the way that you perhaps flirt with other men, if you cannot hold that within yourself and hold integrity within yourself and within your relationship and the love that you have with your partner, then again, that's cheating because it's in the mentality of it.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's an energetic part. You mentally cheat, you energetically cheat. It's pretty much, the physical part might have happened, but, you might as well have done the deed anyway, right? If that's the case.
Yeah. Question for you, and I hear this through discussions with women a lot. Fantasies in the mind, is that cheating? Is reading smut books where there's like, it's not porn, but they're creating the visualization. Women are into smut book. I tried to get into it and I'm like, this feels really awkward. And I don't really need that because I've got it on tap.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, right? There's fantasies and then there's predictive, like you're emotionally and mentally connected to your coworker, fantasizing about the fact that he is sleeping with him on his desk after work, right? That for me would be cheating.
Yeah.
Dreaming of, fantasizing about some Hollywood hunk you're never going to be with kind of stuff. Especially when you're by yourself and stuff like that, there are some things that or you read certain novels and stuff like that. That's in the erotica space kind of thing that I would put that kind of in that category. But you're never going to sleep with Ryan Reynolds.
Damn it.
Sorry,
Really?
Jen.
Bring me Ryan. I'm sure Cass will be fine. Ryan's my one fucking hall pass.
But see, here's the thing, right? It's for me, it's like that's something you're never going to get, right? So that's where the fantasy stuff comes in. And Greg, well, a bit hypocritical because you're saying, one part here, you're saying it's cheating, and I say it's fantasy, right? I'm saying it's access. The difference between cheating and fantasizing is the word access. If you can access that person, then it's cheating. If you can't access them, you are fantasizing. You're dreaming of right?
Yeah. So if a woman is lying there, she's having really bad sex with her really unemotionally available husband who they're just like, oh, it's 5 p.m. on a Sunday, we better do the deed because we're booked in. If she's there and she's fantasizing in her own mind with being with a coworker, for example, cheating, just so we're on the same page, cheating.
Yeah.
She's fantasizing about the romance novel smut book that she's been reading where there's like the gardener fucking the housewife kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not cheating.
Correct.
Okay. Got it. Got it.
Yeah. Because you have access to the coworker.
Yeah.
And for that, there's an emotional connection too. There's no emotional connection, fantasizing about the gardener rooting the desperate housewife, right?
Yeah.
It's a fantasy, right? But you thinking about your coworker and about what that you can tell there's an emotional connection there, right? There's no emotional connection with you dreaming about Ryan Reynolds, right? So sorry, Ryan, if you are listening to this, we are dropping your name.
Ryan will be listening to this. Ryan, we love you. We'd love to have you on the show.
You are Jen's hall pass. So along with 1,000 other people who you are in their hall pass. Jen has watched Wolverine and Deadpool multiple times. So Um,
Do you know what? I just love his personality and his connection with his wife. I actually love how Ryan adores his wife, like lively.
so here's great segue. Wait, this is it. We because we talked stuff about, and I sort of cut it off at the start about what's attractive about these guys. Because I was
Like,
going to say his confidence, right? But it was also his personality that it's even though he's treated you so badly, he's made you do the walk of shame. He's got women lined up behind after you to jump in bed with him, right? And you still chased him.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He had a shit personality. Like this guy that I was talking about, like there was not a lot going for him at all. Like it still doesn't make sense to me.
So what inside the women's DNA really what is it about those type of men? Because we talked more about the alpha males, and look, I've got an idea about why it is the case. It's sort of hardwired in the female's DNA to do this, but what is it about those kind of guys that tend, and we call them the top 10%, right? You look on Tinder, the top 10% have got 15. Well, I think it's actually 20%, but let's just say it's the top 20% of people on Tinder. The guys get all the girls. 80% don't. So 90% of women go after the top 20% of guys, and they know that they have complete carte blanche with the field.
Because this is the thing, like people are so just physically attracted. Like everyone, like Tinder, like you cannot know someone's energy and personality from their photo to swipe on. And if I had a catalog of like the men that I've dated in the last 15 years, had I had a catalog of all of their faces, there would be a lot of them that I had really deep and beautiful connections with that I would not have swiped on them based on how they looked. And in fact, I dated someone earlier in the year who physically by his photos he was offered gold membership because he was so popular on Tinder. They like basically said, hey, you're one of our favorites. So many women are attracted to you. I met him in person. There was like a big discrepancy between his photos and how he physically was. Hugely. And that's a different story within itself because there is this blatant fucking lies in that space. But everyone's looking for like that physical attraction. I think I've shared before, I went on Tinder for a week. This was last year and I paid for it to be like, okay, how am I going to meet someone? I'm just going to filter through the ones that have liked me. In a week, I had like 4,000 likes and I could not handle that amount of energy coming at me. I'm like, turn the fucking thing off. This is disgusting. Right?
Yeah.
But I knew that there was a lot of energy being projected at me, that everyone looking at my photos going, yeah, I'd bang that. Yeah, I'd tap that. Yeah, I'd jam it in that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want that energy being projected at me. But all we're thinking about is, would I have sex with that? And would I enjoy seeing that underneath me or on top of me?
Yeah.
Ultimately, like, I'm not looking at their photo going, so tell me about the humanitarian work that you do in the world. Tell me your relationship with your mother. Tell me the last time you walked a little old lady across the road. Tell me the last time you paid for a coffee in front of you. Tell me about how you treat your ex-partner who's the mother of your children. Do you know what I mean? Like when we don't have that level of connection, everyone's just going off face value. So what are we doing? Changing our fucking faces to be desirable. How much Botox and filler is in women's faces at the moment in the world? How many cheeks are being done, chins being done, eyebrows, all of the things being done to look a certain way because we're believing that that is what is desirable.
It's and you got these young, like I've heard stories of 21, 22-year-olds getting Botox. Like you don't need to do that. You got 21-year-old guys taking Viagra, right? Because they want to be the biggest, hardest, longest, strongest, right? Because that thing is that's what they think women want in that space, right? But it's I think that what's attractive about those guys is confidence, is the space of the place that they have confidence that they know they can have anybody, right? But if you're a female and you actually tag them and they date you, like you said before, it's about I've won. But it's that thing where you go, well, if ever, and this is where I say it's, and again, I'm going to offend half the population now here with this stuff, right? But as a female, you're part of your DNA and your biology, even though I know women can do it all today, all that crap, right? But part of your DNA is to go, will this guy support me if we ever get into trouble? Will this guy be there and protect me and make me a safe environment if I ever get into trouble? There's still that is still a huge biological part of every female, right?
Yep,
You
absolutely.
can't deny that, right? You can try and become as masculine as you want and be the girl boss, but it's that place. And those guys have that. That's the perception, right? Because they have the confidence that, look, they're successful. Well, that's why money is important to women, right? Is because it's for us in today's society, it goes, well, this guy, if he's got money, he's got determined, he's got sacrifice, he's got intelligence, he's got he can be resourceful and stuff like that, right? So that's why for today, especially with men, there's the money is the marker, unfortunately, for that kind of, well, this guy's is that space, right? But we do know that most of these, like you said before, a lot of these very strong masculine men are very shallow, right? And this is why a lot of the things like it's a very difficult thing to sort of, just if you're dating these days, to actually understand what that actually is. But for me, it's like, women still need to have that basic male archetype that provides those kinds of things, and these guys do that on a perception basis, that if they have the confidence, then they subconsciously know that these guys will have these attributes, where if you go for the beta guy, who's the nice guy, who's wants to please you all the time, you can't rely on him. When things get tough and get hard, where is he going to be, right? If there's someone robbing your house, he's pushing you out first.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the
got
thing.
the fridge magnet.
Right. And this is where the thing is, that this is where that comes down to. And when we talk about bare minimum kind of relationships, right? We don't have, a lot of people don't have bare minimum standards. They have lists of things they would like to have, but they don't have bare minimum, right? So look, if I was if I was a guy, I am a guy, right?
If you're a guy.
Bare minimum, for me, is kindness, gentleness, compassion, someone who actually understands their history and why they are where they are, someone who is compassionate, right? That's what I'm looking in a female, somebody who can be there to go and step in that space for me. Because when the men need appreciation and acceptance, right? We need that kind of, and a female who does that is so hot and so attractive, right? I'm not, and it goes in different, right? I'm 50 next year, and I can tell you now, ladies, if you're meeting a guy in his 30s or 40s, your career is not in the top 10 things he wants off you. He doesn't care about your corporate career, because what he cares about is family. And you're seeing a whole shift in the male archetype now, is because a lot of men are actually just going, what's important to me is my family. And if you're chasing your career, I don't want you.
Yeah, because you're not going to be able to provide what I truly want, and that's procreation, that's family, because you're busy chasing, that corporate ladder, trying to climb the corporate ladder, and you're not able to, be that nurturing mother that we're going to need at home. You're so driven by money, or you're driven by status, or
men can't be driven by it, but you can't be, there's so many things that the females inherently can do that men can't do, right? And you can have a man stay at home, but he's never going to be a mum. He doesn't have the necessary skill set to replace that nurturing aspect. And so many guys these days, and you may see this, Jen, with some of the stuff you do, men will ignore red flags for sex.
Oh, always. As will
they
women.
Will ignore every single. They will ignore every single red flag to get laid.
I used to see a red flag as like a sign for a party. I was like, there's a party here. There's got all these red flags. We must be having fun. I'm like, let's go and have a drink.
But it's so common though. And it's like we will ignore as a species every single thing when you go in there and go, I know she's a complete bunny boiler, but I'm getting laid.
Yeah.
And because I haven't been laid in 2 years, I basically just will ignore that, hope I can manipulate her or change her, or she'll change or whatever when we get into the relationship. It's so prevalent these days that people will literally ignore abuse.
Yes.
You know what they're like going in there.
Uh-huh.
You know their history. You know they come from 3 different marriages. You know we may or may not, right? But
It's not always a conscious awareness. It's not sitting in the front of your mind going, this person has a red flag and they're this and I want this. Like this is quite deep seated. This can be quite subconscious as well.
Yeah.
We're making decisions based on what it is that we believe, based on our perception of what a family was growing up and what the dynamic was meant to look like. And I came from a household where, my mum and dad, still married, when I say happily, maybe on and off. But I grew up with my mum saying, I'm only with your dad for the sake of you kids in the church. So I grew up going, if that's what marriage is, I don't want it. And to this day, at 38 years old, I've not been married because I have this belief that marriage means that, and I don't want that style of living. And it doesn't surprise me that then I naturally, innately was just drawn to emotionally unavailable people, so that I didn't actually have to commit and get married. Because if that's what that was, and my mother, from my view of the world, she felt trapped in that. I was like, well, I don't want to make that trap, but I'm not saying that consciously. I didn't say that consciously until I had my face in a bucket spewing my guts up, and ayahuasca was like, here's your belief on marriage. Here's your belief on men. Here's how all these men are like your father, all right?
Yeah.
It wasn't until I had my head in the bucket that I realized, like, oh, I see my own patterns now. So we're not stepping into these relationships or these dynamics with conscious awareness that we're like, oh, I'm going to follow this thing that I've always done, or I'm going to gravitate towards the people that are going to hurt me, or the ones that, I'm climbing the corporate ladder and I just want to have a family. We're doing this really, really deep seated. We're making these decisions because we're just following our inner compass of what feels right. And if our compass is not calibrated to our true north, to our highest good, then we're going to be fucking wandering off in the woods.
Well, most relationships I see today are based in trauma, right? They are literally a trauma bond, right? Because we a lot of the times jump in the relationship because we want to be loved.
Always, yeah.
And that's it. You've already lost the game if that's how you started off.
That's
because it's like, well, I need to fill a hole inside of me. So if I get somebody to actually love me enough, it'll fill it up for myself. And then you put all the expectation on the relationship and the other person to do that for you. You're a victim, then you're a complete victim, and you're wanting this place because you've had these horrible experiences before, or like you said before, mum and dad, whatever the story is, that where you go, I'm unlovable and I am worthless. If I just get someone to love me, then that will make things all better. Well, there's your first foray into a disaster of a relationship, right? And I think if people, you talked about what's at the front and the back of the mind there. I think most people can understand at the front of their mind is, I want to be loved.
Yeah.
As soon as you say that, you're in the wrong place.
Because
that word, I want to be loved,
from first and foremost. Because at the end of the day, yes, we all do want to be loved. But if that's why we're stepping into a relationship or any sort of dynamic with someone, because that is what's sitting up front, then yes, that's where the issue is.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Right. So, and that's the point of it, is that you're not going to get to the place that you need to get to by having a want, right? Because that's coming from a place of lack.
Yes.
And that in itself, is saying to you that there is something about me that doesn't sit right with who I think I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And that you're willing to abandon your own needs and desires to get what it is that you just want, like literally metaphorically, that whole field. It's like, if I can just have that poured into me, if they can just like give me a little bit of what I need, then I'm going to be okay. I can get to the next day. And that is, we're in survival mode.
Well, you said breadcrumbing. Breadcrumbing.
Breadcrumbing, exactly. Like we're just getting these little pieces to be like, I just need this to get me through. If they just said this to get me through, if they just touch me in this way, that'll get me through. If they just like tell me that I'm like worthy of this, if they just introduce me to their friends, whatever the thing is, to just get through, this is where we've got to check in and go, this is not okay. And, when we talk about, the bare minimum standards, I used to have a man menu. I've had multiple man menus in my life, and I used to teach my clients how to do this to manifest a man.
Yeah.
And I found them like a little while ago. I was going through an old box, and it was like, over 6 foot, does this, does that, it was all of these like almost like physical attributes. Like they had to have a good heart. They had to, be on good terms with, the people around them, speak nicely about their mother, all that kind of stuff. Right. But at the end of the day, it was so superficial because nothing of that list I had put down how I want to feel by being in their presence. It was like, what could they give to me in the way that I could go, well, that's a tick that box, that's tick that box, that's tick that box.
So from a female's perspective, you go into a place where you have lack of self-worth, lack of meaning, lack of, any sense of, that you love yourself kind of stuff, and you go into a place, I want someone to love me. What does that lead to from a physical perspective that you give away?
Oh, it leads to having sex with someone that you are not connected with. Like it's unconscious sex. It's literally having like just doing like the physical deed where cool, you might have an orgasm because your nerve endings are being stimulated.
Yeah.
But from a soul perspective, you are just draining your vitality, you're draining your energy, you're draining your life force. Try go out into the world and do amazing shit or be really creative or write or make art or just be a good fucking kind human when you have no life force energy within you.
Well, I mean, in the point, you do things you don't want to do. You know that you're doing sexual acts that go really against who you are as a person, right?
Yeah.
But because you're so needed to want to be loved that you give away, again, you're soul fragmenting at this stage, right? And you and I are then trying to do soul fragment retrieval at a later date because you're doing you're doing things that are against who you are from a moral perspective.
Yeah.
But you're sitting there because I'll let him do this to you because I want him to love me, and if I don't do it, I'll get rejected.
Yeah.
And you're saying, oh, that was great, but deep down inside you're going, that's the most horrible experience I've ever had, borderline rape.
Yeah. And do you know what? The guy that I was speaking about earlier, who I like one in, one out guy that I met at the bar, he actually messaged me one night. I'd blocked his number at one stage and then I unblocked him and then I messaged him when I was out one night and we reconnected and just sort of went through this whole thing. Whenever either of us were out, we'd text, or he'd text me at 5 o'clock in the morning. He hadn't picked up and he's like, are you up? Yeah. And so I remember one time he messaged me and he was staying at a hotel in the city because he'd had a work function on and I was already in bed, and he'd messaged me and he's like, I've got a hotel room. I got up out of bed. I put a full face of makeup on. I drove down. I'm like, oh my God, a hotel. So, because what happened was every time we slept together, I'd always leave afterwards. I'd never stayed with him. And all I wanted was aftercare. All I wanted was like the cuddling afterwards and that connection afterwards. And I was like, oh, maybe that's going to happen at a hotel. And I remember like I went to the hotel, things happened. And then like there was like this like wall of China between us. There was like no, and I was like, there was no affection. All I wanted was affection. And I was like, what do I have to give you in order to receive affection? Because I was so low on that.
Yeah. And again, like I said before, is that the guy's actually referencing your internal dialogue, right? This is not the guy's problem. This has nothing to do with the guy, right? And this is where I know this is quite confronting for people in this space, right? Especially when you've sometimes been, technically abused. Is that he's actually reflecting back to you your own self-worth. So you're creating the experience instead of actually blaming him for the fact that he's trying between you two and there's no affection, is that he's just doing what you're telling him to do. Yeah. He's doing exactly what you're telling yourself that your self-worth is. Yeah. And so he's abusing you because you abuse you.
I abuse me. Exactly. Like if he can text me and I can get up out of my bed in the middle of the night to go and have sex with this guy at a hotel, he's like,
and he's wrong.
Fucking easy.
Yeah. Like it's and that's the thing, is like standards, like bare minimum standards these days doesn't exist for a lot of people because we're so in this place of needing to be with somebody, right? And that's the thing, right? So it's a very, we need to get back to having some values, right? And look,
Mm,
that's sometimes very hard to do, but it starts with, like you said before, yourself. It starts with your own self-worth. It starts with your own story. It's about, okay, what was my childhood like? What do I think of myself? What's my current identity? Have a very good conversation about, I
mm,
actually think I'm a piece of shit. I think I'm worthless. I think I'm unlovable.
mm,
Right. Okay. Everything in my life is reflecting back to me that I think that this is the case.
mhm,
Now I need to sort that out first, because when I have that self-worth, that guy would even stand a chance with me.
mm. Yeah, if I saw that guy now, like I would laugh. I would be like,
Well, you know
he
what?
would have
You know what?
no clue what I have been through in my own self.
You know what I'd
Like he
love to
wouldn't
do?
have a
If you can
clue what was
replay that, Jen,
contributed.
you can go and you can just play with him and go and lead him on and go, you can't have this.
No,
You
exactly.
think you
Not
can
at
have this, but
all.
you can't have this.
No,
The stuff, reject
absolutely
him.
not. No. The thing is, like, I truly believe, like, I truly believe when you get to that realization that enough's enough, because I got to the point where enough was enough. And that was even
Yeah.
before I'd sat in the, in an ayahuasca ceremony. Like, I had enough experiences where I'm like, this is not okay. I need
Well,
to find ways in which I can love myself so that I'm making decisions for my best self, like the best decisions I can make in my highest good. Because if I truly deeply love myself, I would not be letting this happen. And so,
yeah.
what I would really recommend, especially to women, is to go through a reset. And that reset might include celibacy for a period of time. It could be 5 months, could be like 12 months,
Could
could
be
be
12 months.
2 years.
Yeah.
Like, just give yourself a break where you are not engaging with men in any way. You're not out to date. You're not seeking it. And just notice what comes up for you. Get to the uncomfortable part where you're squeamish. You're like, I just want someone to love me. Like, because
Yeah.
that's going to be like, essentially, that's the part of the medicine ceremony where we purge things. The absolute fucking discomfort. Get uncomfortable with this and find what comes up for you when you take away the one thing that you've been giving away so freely. And
Yeah.
then from a physical, like more of an energetic and physical perspective, connect with someone, or you can do them yourself, but you can do what's called a yoni steaming as well, where you have these beautiful herbs, you sit over this thing and you literally steam out the energy, and you steam out like physical things that can happen from within your body. Because remembering as well, we also have quantum entanglement. So for
Yes.
every person that you have slept with, you are entangling with their energy, and every person that they have slept with. And then we just got all of this energy that ends up in your system, and you're walking around going, why do I feel like a piece of shit? Because I abandoned myself and my own needs to someone else, and they felt like a piece of shit. And then they've been sleeping with other people that feel like a piece of shit. Like, and this is obviously, how STDs run so rampant these days as well.
Yeah.
It's because everyone's screwing everyone, and everyone's going, oh, I'm not going to, I don't need to use protection. You look trustworthy. I've heard that before. I was like the queen of protection. I'm like, you double glove, mate. Because one of the things I was worried about was like, okay, if I end up with an STD that, it could be a friend for life, I've got to deal with that side of myself.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't want to put myself in that position. And it happens to people. And I've worked with so many women that have got herpes because they made decisions based on abandoning themselves. So not only do they have to deal with that self-abandonment, that low self-worth, they now have to deal with the stigma that they have put on themselves and
The
society
shame.
put on them walking around. So much shame for having
Yeah.
herpes. And then having to have conversations with people to say, I would like to be in a sexual relationship with you. However, I have herpes.
Mm.
Like that, to have that, I have coached so many women through that conversation to get comfortable with those words coming out of their mouth and everything that comes out for them through that. And you're putting yourself in that position if you are having unprotected sex with people out there who are also having unprotected sex with other people out there. It is a massive fucking risk that women and men take. But, it's men seem to, and I'm generalizing hugely here, but men seem to care less about this.
Oh no, it's not generalization. They if they don't have to wear a glove, they're happy to. Right. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and again, it comes back to again bare minimum standards, right? Like
Well,
you have this. Oh, what happens? If he doesn't want to have sex. If I say glove up and he says no, there's that rejection. Again, I'm giving away stuff, right? So we have to come back to having some kind of value system that has a bare minimum standard. And like you said, that may result in you not having sex for 2 years. Now, there comes, and that's when if you can't deal with that, then you know that you've got some stuff about
the problem,
self-worth.
exactly that. Yeah.
Right? Is that, okay, right, well, I'm giving him, and the thing, once you've given it away, it's hard to get back.
Yeah.
And that's where, and as we said, soul fragmentation is very, very difficult to do, right? Because it's like you're sitting there, trying to get parts of you back that you rejected and gave away purely for the sake of wanting to have love and affection and some kind of touch. And you'll do some horrible things in that space.
I remember calling parts of my soul back from that particular experience the night that I spoke about, going back to this guy's friend's place. Like, I remember that part of myself that I had to retrieve from that space. I was a mess calling that part of myself back.
Yeah.
Because I felt so much shame that I had put myself in that position to do so.
Yeah.
And I went through this whole process of like, am I a shit human that left a perfect relationship on the outside? Sure, it wasn't fulfilling, but it was safe. And now I'm putting myself in these emotionally unsafe positions. Like, I'm learning through this. Like, should I not have just stayed in my comfortable home that I had in my unhappy relationship, but at least, that was the safe place for me to be, because now I'm not like crying to the fucking moon, walking home with my shoes in my hand after doing the walk of shame. Like, there's this real, like, and you go through awakenings, like, and if you've been through this, it's not an opportunity to go deeper into that shame. Like, let's invite in some forgiveness of self. That's going to be one of the biggest parts here before you start even calling those parts of yourself back, is realizing that the job is done. Like, what is done is done. And you get to work with that. You get to work in the space of forgiveness with that, and just radical self-kindness. Like, that's such an element of this.
Well, there's one place even worse than this, right? And it tends to go both ways these days, but usually it was more on the female to male side, is that, I only brought this up because I read an article about the other day online, is about going after married men.
Going up to married men, as in women
going after, hunting
after
married men, like sleeping with married men. Like, that's the thing, is that, again, bare minimum standards. Like, you've got some of these women out here who are just attracting married men, and they're sleeping with them, knowing the fact that they're sleeping with a guy who's married and got 3 kids at home, or 2 kids at home.
Yeah.
Right. And then they're blaming the guy for the fact of, like, go for it. The guy's doing the wrong thing, right? But again, you're making the choice to, that's an energetic tie that's very, very, very toxic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because there's betrayal in that space, right? And you can blame him all you want about, well, he's the one who's married and he's the one with 3 kids. I was single. Like, again, tell yourself whatever fucking story you want to do about the fact that, but I was single, I can do what I like. No, this guy was married. He had children at home, and you still fucked him.
Yeah. And it's, for a lot of women, it's the thrill of the chase. It is being like, to receive that level of attention from someone who is so unattainable technically because they're married. It's almost like that's like the gold standard of worthiness.
That's exactly the article I read, is that she found that she actually said it made her feel good. It was a massive ego thing that she could actually go after these men and grab them who are married, who are in committed relationships, because it gave her, like, she was quite adamant it made her feel good, right?
Yeah. If that's the type of thrill that you're chasing, you've got to check in with yourself, because, honey, there's so many more thrills out there, right? You can do so many more things with your life than chase married men for shits and giggles.
But that's also a reflection of you as well. You're choosing unavailable men, right? Or how many times do you hear it is that, oh, he's going to leave his wife and kids for you.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, God. I've worked with
that
so many
he ain't doing
clients
that. He's not leaving his wife and kids for you.
No, you're a piece of meat on the side. Yeah. 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 In fact, he's probably going to have another baby with her. And like, it's so messy. Like, and this is the thing, like, the men will feed them this because it's that breadcrumbing mentality again, isn't it? It's like, give them a little bit, give them a little bit. And then eventually when she realizes, oh, he's not leaving. Oh, he's not coming to me. Oh, he's not going to build a life with me. Oh, oh,
And you're already
and then you
broken, right?
realize
Because
that you were used. Like
yeah,
the recognition of being used and feeling like a piece of meat, you then have to deal with those levels of shame, those levels of guilt, all of the things. And not only that, if he is cheating on you, on his wife with you, he's likely to do it to you as well.
yeah,
If he's got that mentality that his behavior is okay, he's going to, he's not going to go, oh, well, I got the woman that I always wanted out of this, and you're the best thing ever. Because as soon as something goes wrong, guess where he's going? Back to
home to
the
his wife.
wife, back to the receptionist, to the chick that sells him milk at the health food store, like
Yeah,
whoever it is. Like, it's that mentality. He's not just going, oh, thank gosh, I've got you. Like, I'm so glad I left my wife and all of that behind. It doesn't happen that way. Maybe 0.0005% chance, maybe, if you're lucky,
yeah. And
right?
if you're already broken, like, for somebody to, and male or female, right? If you're doing that, you're already in a very unhealthy state, mindset wise, and you're already, quite have very, very low self-esteem, quite broken anyway, right? That you're
No.
attracting that kind of unavailability in a man or a female is because the reason why you're attracting somebody who is unavailable is because you are unavailable for yourself.
Yeah,
And
because
that's going to
like
make,
attract like.
you reject yourself even further.
Yeah.
Like you said before, the guilt and shame in that space,
Mm,
and again, this goes back to standards. Like,
yeah.
what kind of person are you? What kind of values do you have? Because that's what you'll take into your relationships, like a committed
Mm,
relationship, right? If you just can't all of a sudden change, oh, now I'm in a relationship, all my values change, right?
mhm,
If 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 you've done that, you're going to drag that trauma into any kind of relationship, and that will destroy it if it's
mhm,
unaddressed, right? Because if you take that guilt and shame into somewhere and thinking a relationship's going to fix that shit,
mhm.
you're kidding yourself.
You're kidding yourself, and you're hurting your partner in the process as well, because you're putting that on them and you're dragging them into your shit show as well.
Mm. All right. Rebound relationships.
Ooh.
I think we talked about it before, but
I think we
again,
touched on
that's
this.
that sort of,
Yeah,
again, that comes back into standards, right?
it
Is
does.
that jumping from one into the other? It's like that again. I need to have someone in my life.
Exactly. Exactly. I've experienced, so my ex-partner from a while ago, we separated and he was like, I want to do the growth work. I want to be on my own. I'm like, cool, great, go for it. Live your best life. Bang, straight into a relationship. And I was like, hang on a second. And I was like, oh, this is the rebound thing. And noticing the pattern, I was also the rebound from his marriage, which I
Yeah.
didn't. And I was like, no, I couldn't be a rebound. Like, I could see the signs from a mile away. And technically, I mean, I was the first person that he was with, even though he'd been separated from, his ex-wife for a period of time. I was still the first cab off the rank in the next round.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, to be the person that someone is rebounding with is a really shit feeling, because you're constantly being compared to them. You're constantly like, it's almost like you've got this, you've got to uphold this I'm better than them because mentality.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to prove your worth even further to the person in that rebound relationship.
Well, again, it's trauma bonding, right? Because he's with you to, to get over something, right?
Yeah.
To get over the feeling of whatever it is that, and then all of a sudden you make me feel good, right? Then it's again, you're in a
Mm,
space where somebody's doing something to you to make you feel better about your own lack of self-worth.
mhm,
It's so, again, it's very, very common.
mm.
What advice do you have for people going, all right, Greg, Jen, I get you, I hear you. What do I do, or how can I actually not end up in a situation where I'm in a very, very bad relationship? What do I need to do, or who do I need to become, but more the
Mm,
question,
mm.
to start a relationship in the right frame of mind and the right framework?
Get so clear on your values, on who you are and what it is that you want from life. And then you can, because you're going to create an energetic frequency because of that, and you're going to
Yep.
attract a partner in that space. So you have the reset, like, have the celibacy, have the space where you are not talking or entertaining the idea of a relationship or of a connection with someone for a period of time to the point where you get uncomfortable. It's not just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to take a month off dating apps. I'm not going to entertain that idea. I'm not going to go, sleep with the next door neighbor. It's going
When
to
was
be,
the next door neighbor's Ryan Reynolds?
well, that's why. Oh, I need to like Cass know that he's no whole pass. And if Ryan Reynolds moves in next door, then we're all having a barbecue. Although, to be honest, I wouldn't mind even taking Blake Lively, his wife. So
No need to swap keys, just do a whole bowl, right?
exactly, I'll put the red flags up out the front of the house.
Put the pineapple on the door, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah. Well, it's also dealing with your shit, right? Like a lot of people don't go into and actually deal with their trauma from their mum, their dad, their previous relationships, the story. They don't know who they are. A lot of people actually don't know the way that identity works and the way that our mind actually projects reality. And by not understanding that, you're just walking from one trauma into another trauma into another trauma, which is why relationships these days, tend to be disposable because we just, just complete this trauma bond on an ongoing basis. And we have this, oh, he gets me. Oh, she gets me. Oh, she feels my pain. And they get to sit there in the space of their own shit. And my husband cheated on me and my wife cheated on me. And you've got this, oh, someone really gets me, but it's just a piece of crap relationship because it's bonded over a negative, right? Not an aspirational goal. And these guys haven't dealt with anything. And then they just, when they make the relationship about, this kind of thing, the relationship will heal me. It's like, no wonder it goes wrong because then there is no depth to it. There's no basis of, positivity. You're not bringing what do you bring into the relationship? Here's my shit. Here's my
here's
trauma.
all my trauma.
Right?
Yeah.
And I get it, right? People misinterpret it because they think it's love, right? It's not love. That's pure trauma bonding, right?
It's trauma. Yeah.
And misinterpret because love is inspirational. Love is accountability. Love in the aspect of love, it's the dark and light. It's the ability to sit there and go deal with your shit, right? And call it out. It wants something bigger. It's you bring your aspect, you bring your A game to the fore, right? And you create a relationship. You don't need a relationship. It's a symbiotic third wheel that's based on something that you create when you bring your best version to yourself, because you are the aspect of love. The other person is the aspect of love. And in that space, you create this, energetic kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like there's modalities that people can do. Like I'm not a facilitator of this, but I've participated in family constellations before. And that has been, it's been a really, really valuable way for me to just check in with my staff. So if anyone can get to a family constellations thing, I would recommend that. Work with a coach, work with someone like Greg or I, work in the space of relationships. Tantra is a beautiful way to learn about, like the first principle of Tantra is know thyself.
Yeah.
So work in the tantric space with a tantric practitioner to just get to know who you are and, the ways in which, like as a practitioner, I can teach people ways in which they can connect with themselves, not even in a relationship. Before you even get to the point of the relationship, like do the work on yourself first, because I know personally, and you've heard part of a fraction of my story today, to go from that to having, this beautiful conscious relationship where we're so open, it's so nourishing, it's so sacred. Like that's been a journey to get there. Like there's been so much work that I've had to do on myself, checking in with myself constantly, knowing what my values are, knowing my boundaries, learning how to say no, knowing how to communicate with people, knowing how to really honor and acknowledge myself and come back to myself and love myself wholeheartedly through this whole process. Because if the self-love isn't there, then you don't have a solid foundation.
Yeah, and you've got these things here that in this space that we're constantly also trying to fix things, right? And you'll be very, very careful that the problems you perceive that to be the problems quite often aren't the problems. So I would strongly recommend people listening to this that you can't do it yourself.
Exactly.
That you can watch as many YouTube videos as you want. You can try and find as many things as you want out there. But the reality is to do and have a conscious relationship, I've done it, you've done it. It
Mm,
requires us to be in a space where we need the outside help from somebody who's been through it or who has the
mm,
authority to do this stuff, right?
mhm.
Quite often what will happen is that we will be trying to fix problems that aren't really the problems. And that's why it takes a skilled person like
Yeah.
yourself or me to sit there and go, the things you were trying to fix, they weren't the problem. Your problem's over
Mm,
here. No wonder
yeah.
you're wasting your time over there trying to do this, this, and this because you perceive that they're not doing this and they're not doing this and they're not doing that. And because, we are in a space where we quite often say, well, my relationship will be better if he does this or she does this
Mm,
and whatever like that. And as soon as you're saying something like that, there is that space of projection. And you can't have a healthy relationship in a place where you're telling people what to do. You have
exactly.
to bring
Yeah.
your A game to it and understand, well, the real problem will probably be somewhere in your childhood about what you think of yourself. And you've actually attracted that kind of person into your life. And once you change the aspect of your identity and who you think you are and your self-worth and self-belief, then you'll see a
Mhm.
different version of person. And then you'll see the problem you're trying to fix actually disappear
Mhm.
automatically. And then you can work on the real things that need to be done to actually create a healthy relationship, which will probably be you,
Yes, exactly. Always,
not the other
always.
person.
Yeah, yeah, and it is all about self. Who you are and who you show up as in a relationship, that's all about you. The expectations that you think you have on that other person are the expectations that you have on yourself. The things that trigger you in or activate you that your partner does is all about what's in yourself. It's your perception, it's your view of that. The relationship is there to reflect that back to you. And so
Yeah,
by working with a coach or a mentor or a practitioner who works in this space specifically, like ourselves, we're going to reflect back to you what we can see through this from a professional space to be
yeah,
like, we got some mommy issues here. We got some daddy issues here. We've got some what happened here? Like, let's go back deeper into this. And that's where the true lasting change is, because we can do the surface level stuff like, sure,
mm,
go for Reiki, go for a chakra balance, go for a massage,
yeah,
go and move this kind of stuff. But if you're not working with the deep belief systems that you're holding, they're not going to go away. There's no magic pill that you can swallow. There's no magic wand that you can wave. There's no magical healer that you can go to fix this. Going to a psychic every fucking 6 months going, why isn't my relationship working out? What's wrong with me?
doesn't do
But you
anything.
can't deal with your deep inner shit. You've got
Yeah.
a fucking problem. You know this firsthand.
Yeah. And the thing is that when you go and see a traditional therapist, what they'll do is go through the perceived problems and then go through, okay, well, who needs to fix what? And quite
Mm,
often it's a blame game, right? So it's you're doing this wrong and you're doing this wrong. There's a lack of accountability in a lot of, relationship modalities out there, rather
mm,
than the way that you and I work is that it's all on you.
yeah.
Right. But again, if you're in a relationship and you're going to go, Craig, but my husband's beating me. It's like, no, right. He may be beating you. I do not condone that. That is just the horrid kind of thing.
Mm,
But why did you bring him into your life in the first place? Because again,
mm.
that goes back to what we're talking about, bare minimum standards, right?
Exactly, because you believe that you're a piece of shit, you will let someone treat you like you're a piece of shit. Like, this is
Yeah,
like when you hold the standards of like, these are my bare minimum standards, you will treat me like this and this only, or I'm out.
I'm out.
And
Yeah.
this is the thing. Not only have the boundaries, follow through on your boundaries. I cannot scream this loud enough, because if you tell someone your boundary and you let them cross
Don't do
that,
it.
that's a shit show. It's an absolute shit show,
Because
right?
what do they learn? Once you back down your boundaries, what do they learn?
They learn that they can keep on doing it, they
They
can
keep
walk all
doing it.
over you,
Yep.
and then that you are going to reiterate your worthlessness. You're going to reiterate within yourself that you have no value because people walk all over you. It is because you have let them in your life.
Wow.
Mm.
One topic. One topic. Look, I think there's more in this, right? Because I'm that there is a bare minimum standard, and for you guys, listeners out there, like we are coming to the end of the year with this. In December, we're going to finish up the podcast because I'm on holidays and Jen's on
I'm
holidays.
taking time off. Yeah.
But we have got some things coming next year that and probably put some courses together, like a 7-day challenge, 14-day challenge. We'll have some, deep, introspective kind of initiation kind of things, right? Because it's so common that there's so much crap out there with people, is that building a relationship is actually quite easy. Like it ain't hard, right? The hard part is you taking accountability for where you're at and understanding, why things are happening the way they are, and actually do something about it. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Understanding what is actually very, very, very easy. But someone like Jen and I will not pull punches. We're here not to be your friends. We're here to actually just go, right, the reason why you are where you are, take accountability for it.
Yeah.
Like, you are the creation of your reality. You are doing this. And again, we might talk about, I think maybe in the next one or after that, we'll talk about, the single life and stuff like that. I have no idea about that because I've had relationships since I was 19, right? But it's a space where, again, Greg, you're talking about relationships here. What about people who are single? What about how do we sort of meet people and stuff like that? So we will go into stuff like that. So
yeah, I've got a lot of experience being single, and I have found that I have done so much work on myself being single before I felt ready to go into another relationship. And I can speak really deeply on this, and I'm really passionate about this. I'm really passionate about people being single and thriving in it too. Like, really loving life, really being able to find themselves and connect with themselves. Sure, life might be a little bit cruisier because you don't have things being reflected to you in a relationship, but just get really solid in the foundation of yourself before stepping into that. And that's what happens in the space when you're single.
Perfect. All right, Jen, where can they find us?
Oh, Instagram, Intuition and Orgasms podcast. Leave us, comments, reviews on Spotify, on YouTube. You'll find us around. Share it around. We've had so many people messaging us. I had a client of mine the other day because we, late getting this episode out, saying, "Where is this episode? I've got to drive home from work and it's not live yet." I'm like, "We had technical issues. I'm sorry."
Greg had technical issue. Greg was a dick.
Yeah. So, and we've got a guest interview coming up shortly. So that's going to be exciting. And then we're going to have more guests on next year. So there's lots happening for us.
Yes. And so, look, this has been a big one, I think, for a lot of people. It's quite a touchy subject for people to actually, if they can look at this and kind of go, yeah, I can probably see where I need to, have a look at my own shit, right? It's really important. But, and that's why we're here, guys. That's why we're here, actually, just share some really home truth. We can't see everybody. We're only 2 people, and we don't see a lot of people, right? So our job is to be able to give you, listen to this and go, right, this is what, this is the first foray into being able to, shift to play. Because in reality, and I keep saying this to people, when on our deathbed, there's one thing we care about, and it's only one. It's the people we care about.
Yeah.
And that's why Jen and I are doing this, is because it's important to us. It's a value to us, right, to share this stuff, because we know how important it is. We know, when all the success happens and it all falls apart, the only thing that matters in life is the people you connect with.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that we can talk about this. I love that we have the space to share the walk of shame to where we're at now. Let's acknowledge that the red flags weren't a party that we walked straight into. We're able to speak about this stuff openly because we've been there, done that, got the fridge back there and the tea towel. That's why we're here.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Jen. Guys, we'll see you in the next episode in a couple of weeks. And if you need to reach out to us, please do, because we're more than happy to help out. So we'll see you later.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. We hope you loved it, and the biggest compliment that you can give us is leaving a rating and review. If you would like to get in touch with us, please feel free to reach out via our Instagram page, Intuition and Orgasms Podcast. We will see you in the next episode.